water that I'm probably not gonna drink while filming this video. Look at how cool this mug is. Holy shit, you guys. I am excited to be filming this. I don't really film that much lately, or I haven't been filming that much lately. Today we are going to be talking about the Stanford prison experiment, and a lot of you might have already heard of this. I've heard of it quite a few times before, but I never grasped what it was or remembered what it was. This is whack. I can't believe this ever actually happened, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So let's jump into it. So this was an experiment that obviously happened at Stanford, and I think it happened in the 70s, so it was quite a while ago, but it only went for 6 days, August 14th to August 20th. It wasn't very long before they decided that they had to shut that shit down. So basically the point of the whole experiment was to kind of just look at the dynamic between the prisoner and the prison guards and what would happen if somebody was given... Can you guys hear that on the camera?
All the way across the pond, the literal pond, quite a ways from me. My back door is open because my dogs are on the deck. They are vacuuming their deck.
So I'm going to continue recording. So as I was saying, the point of this experiment was basically to look at the dynamic between the prisoner and the prison guard and to kind of see what would happen when one was given all the power and the other one was kind of dehumanized and given nothing, essentially. And they were really looking to see how far the guards would take it and how much the prisoners would put up with. So they had about 75 volunteers, but they only chose about 25 of them and roughly split that amount in half to be prisoners and guards. Before they started, I believe everyone was given a psych test to kind of make sure everybody was on the same page to start off with, and that there were no pre-existing conditions, probably not only that would affect the experiment, but would affect them, because this was already going to be a difficult thing, and if you haven't learned about this, you're going to find out why, but this was very difficult on everyone's mental health. These people were only making $15 a day. And I know that that's back in the 70s, but that's still not a lot of money. So what they did was they set up an entire jail in the basement of this school, like individual cells, and they even went as far as to make a fake solitary confinement room, which had no lights, no windows, and it was very small. So they went pretty far to stage this entire thing and make it look as real as they could. Now, of course, the people who volunteered knew that this was an experiment. They knew this was fake. They knew they weren't actually prisoners or guards, but the mind is a very powerful thing, and the people running this experiment definitely took advantage of that. The guards were required to wear military type uniforms, but also reflective sunglasses, which is a big part of this in a subtle way. Like, it seems like a small detail, but they didn't want the prisoners to be able to look the guards in the eye. So it just really adds to the fact that they were trying to strip away any humanity that the prisoners had. Now, the prisoners had to actually wear jumpsuits as if they were in actual prison, but they took away their names and they replaced them with numbers. So when they came into this prison, they were all blindfolded and taken down to where the jail was, so none of them had any idea that this was just in the basement of their school. They had no idea where it was, so it really added on to the fact that this felt real to them. Immediately they did strip searches when they got down to the jail, and guards were already making fun of them. They were making fun of their bodies, their genitals, calling them names. As soon as they stepped inside, these guards had already taken total advantage of the situation and of the power that they were given. I still find that so alarming that these people were just so ready to be terrible and cruel, and they really seemed to just enjoy that. Like, they were put in day one, and it didn't even seem a little bit weird for them to step into this role. It was automatic. So to add to that, there was really no limits on what they could do or what they could say. It's crazy. Day one was pretty standard. I think everybody in the experiment still had it in the back of their mind that this was an experiment and it wasn't real, so they were kind of just doing as they're told and they didn't have any problems. But by day two, only day two, already the prisoners were already acting out. They had taken their mattresses in their cells and barricaded them inside their cells by putting them against the door so that the guards could not get in. Sorry, the vacuum's on again. So, of course, the guards were pissed off about that because they felt like they're in charge and these people are already not listening to them on day 2. But there was one guard in particular, I think his name is Dave Eshelman, who really wanted to prove a point in this experiment, and he has admitted to that himself. Like, he really wanted to come in and stir the pot and just make things as chaotic as he could to add to this experiment.
I arrived independently at the conclusion that this experiment must have been put together to prove a point about prisons being a cruel and inhumane place, and therefore I would do my part, to help those results come about. I was a confrontational and arrogant 18-year-old at the time, and I said somebody ought to stir things up a bit. I think that I was the instigator of this whole schedule of harassment.
The guards were already putting the prisoners to work, making them do gross things like cleaning the bathroom, scrubbing the toilet with their bare hands, but on top of that, they were waking them up in the middle of the night to get these things done. And in this basement, you guys, there were no windows, so they had no...
My foot is falling asleep.
...concept of time, whether it was day or night. Whenever these guards told them to go to sleep, they did, and that was their bedtime, but they were purposely interrupting their sleep. I don't know if they ever actually went to bed during the day or how that happened, but like, whenever they decided they got to go to sleep, they would purposely interrupt it by making them get up, go clean, and then sending them back to bed, which really fucks with your mental health when you do that. It can do pretty good damage. Partway through this, prisoner 8612 decided that he could not do it anymore. He told the professor that he wanted to leave, and to my knowledge, when you're participating and volunteering in an experiment, they can't force you to stay, and it's known, like, they can't make you stay. You can leave at your own free will because you are a volunteer. When he said that he wanted to leave and this happened, I'm so sorry you guys, everyone's name is slipping from me in this video, but I'm pretty sure his name was Professor Zombardo, if that's how you say it, who was running the experiment. He was a psychologist running the whole thing. When this was brought up to him, he kind of seemed to struggle with, like, I don't know if this was on purpose or just like an in-the-moment thing, but it just seemed to me as though he struggled to kind of get back to reality, because while he wasn't directly involved in this experiment and he was just kind of running and watching the whole thing, he took on the role of prison superintendent in this moment and didn't give him a harsh no, you can't leave, but really deflected the situation and made the prisoner feel as though that's what he was saying, because instead he said, well, we can move you to a new section where hopefully the guards won't harass you as much. And he was already having psychological trauma from this experience, and of course that's why he wanted to leave. So feeling that way, feeling like you've been told no, you're not allowed to leave, of course he went back to the other prisoners and told them that the professor is saying that none of them can leave. When he spread the word and other prisoners started to think that they weren't getting out of there, shit really got crazy. In the end, prisoner 8612 ended up staying, but his mental health just kind of like really went downhill. He became so mentally disturbed to the point where they had to force him to leave.
Damn it! Fucked up! You don't know, I mean, God. I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm burning up inside, don't you know? I feel really fucked up inside, you don't know. I gotta go. To a doctor, anything. I can't say that. I'm fucked up. I don't know how to explain it. I'm all fucked up inside! No!
As an experience, it was unique. I've never screamed so loud in my life. I've never been so upset in my life. And it was an experience of being out of control.
They really thought that he was going to come back with his friends and help the other prisoners escape, because he felt like he was being tortured in there. So I don't blame them for thinking that that state of mind would continue on for a little bit for him, thinking that they're also being tortured and wanting to come back and get them out. But what happened was they ended up taking the entire prison down and moving it to a new location, but he never came, so I think they moved it back, but I'm not exactly sure. So there was another prisoner, 819, who took a different path and just decided that he was done, but he didn't ask to leave. Instead, he just stopped participating in anything the prisoners were required to do. So for a while, he locked himself in his cell, and when the prisoners were required to clean, he just decided that he wasn't going to help and he wasn't going to do it. So instead of punishing just him, they punished everybody else for what he was doing. They really took away any sense of individuality that any of these prisoners had by making them feel like they had to act as a group, because if one of them stepped out of line, everybody else got punished for it. But finally, prisoner 819 decided that he was going to leave, so when he was talking to the professor, the psychologist, they were just kind of having a final conversation, I think, regarding like compensation and how all that was going to work out. But before he even left, like while they were having this conversation, prisoners from their cells started yelling, "Prisoner 819 did a bad thing."
And I don't know how to quote the entire sentence, so I did that.
They were yelling this over and over, and when 819 heard that, he just started crying and having like a mental breakdown and told him that he actually didn't want to leave. And this was only day 4, but I think he finally left because they found another prisoner to fill his spot, prisoner 416. He was treated the same as everybody else. He was brought in with a blindfold, he was stripped down, they did a strip search on him and threw him in a cell. But when he got there, he just decided to go on a hunger strike and not eat. And I think going into this, he already had an idea of what he wanted to do to kind of disrupt the patterns that were already set. And now we have a guard who really wanted to stir the pot, but we also have a prisoner who went into this experiment purposely to just kind of cause chaos. And of course, that pissed off the guards once again, because they didn't even have a chance to give him a reason to not listen or give him a reason to be so fed up with this. He came in being defiant. So they just ended up putting him in solitary confinement for a while, but by the end of the 5th day, they already had around 4 prisoners leave. They couldn't handle it anymore and they were gone. During this time, another professor, I believe she was also a psychologist, her name is Christina Maslach, and I don't know if I'm saying that right, so I apologize, but she decided to visit this experiment, see how it was being run, see how progress was coming and what was going on, and I'll enter a clip of them talking about it here.
The guards had lined up the prisoners to go to the toilet, had bags over their head, chains on their feet, and were marching by, and I looked up and I saw this circus, this parade, and I said, "Hey Chris, look at that."
I looked up and I just began to feel sick to my stomach. I had this just chilling, sickening feeling of watching this, and I just, I just turned away and I just let loose in this emotional tirade. I just lost it.
And I'm furious. I'm saying, you're supposed to, we had a big argument. You're supposed to be a psychologist. This is this interesting dynamic behavior in such a few days. I'm going through this whole thing. She says, no, young boys are suffering and you are responsible. You're letting it happen. I said, oh my God, of course you're right. So in that sense, it's unethical. That is, nobody has the right, the power, the privilege to do that to other people.
So on day 6, after these conversations that you saw, they finally decided that they needed to shut this down. And thank God. This was a really interesting experiment, and I don't think that they learned as much as they could have because they had to cut it short. Okay, sorry guys, my camera died, so I had to set it all back up. But I think I forgot to mention that one of the prisoners who left was having basically like a mental breakdown before he could even make it to the door. The professor had to kind of like repeatedly tell him, this is fake, this is an experiment, and I've heard that he could like see him come back to reality. He was so out of it, like it took him a couple minutes of this professor reminding him that it was fake. Like he came into this knowing that it was not real, for him to realize that this was it was a real experience, but like it wasn't a real experience, if you know what I'm saying. Like it wasn't supposed to be as traumatizing as it ended up being, because it was fake, it was fabricated, it was created by these people for this purpose. It wasn't even a real jail, like they just created it on their own, and he was able to kind of like leave with a more clear conscience. But that's crazy to me that they were so snapped out of this in just a couple of days. They like lost it. I've heard that the professor running this ended up eventually talked about how he felt like he really lost sight of what he was doing at this time. He definitely took his role over the top, and that's crazy to me because he wasn't even involved in this. He had no role to play. He was strictly monitoring it, and even then, he still, consciously or not, like, I feel like this is all subconscious, because at some point it just clicks in your brain that this is survival mode and this is what you gotta do. And it's crazy to see somebody who was supposed to be on the outside still take charge and still abuse their position in what was happening, because everybody just totally lost sight of what the fuck was going on. But nonetheless, like I said, this is just a super interesting experiment, and I'm sure there's a lot more in depth that I could go, so I'm going to probably research this more, but I just wanted to talk about the basics with you guys for those of you who haven't heard of it, because this is just so fascinating to me that this was something that ever happened, and there's probably a lot more laws and rules set in place that something this severe wouldn't be able to take place again, but it's interesting that it did happen because we can look back on it, and while I don't think they necessarily got the results they wanted, I'm sure that they did learn quite a bit from this. But that's it for today's video, you guys, so let me know what you think down below of this experiment. Thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I will link my social media down below if you guys want to follow that. Go ahead and do it, and I'll see you next week. Bye, guys!